Okay, welcome back. Again, in this hopefully last portion of our demonstration videos, we'll be able to complete this drawing in its rough out form, and then you can then work on the other elements that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this demonstration in terms of adding some detail and some interest to the drawing. So let's start with a quick review. We have in the previous drawing, we were able to create the profile. Remember, we were able to find the edges here. We were able to put in a baseline and a finished floor line, and we were able to measure from the finished floor up to the ridge line to find our ridge height in this form. So now here's our basic element. We were able to place the window here. I put some trim on it. I was able to put the solarium in here. Here's the lower portion that cantilevers out. Here's the finished floor. Not necessarily have to be like that, but it was easy for it to mark. Here's the sill of the solarium. Here's the band and the head of the first set of windows going up to the angle break, which is right here, then tucking back into the building here at that last piece right there. So I've gone ahead and put in the divisions so they'd make a little bit more sense and you can see them a little bit more readily. Now, our next goal is to put the porch. Now, we're going to do just this porch. Whatever we do here, you can do on this side. It's exactly the same, but only in an opposite hand way. So whatever technique we use on this side, please apply it to this side to complete the drawing. Okay, so having said that, the things that we did last time, if you remember, is we found the base, we built the walls going, or the posts going up, we found the roof, and we're going to do the same thing here. So what we're going to do is we'll be looking at the fact that our plan is going to grow a little bit. I mean, our drawing is going to grow a little bit this way. How far? You see it right there. All that dimension out there is provided. It looks like my copy got a little bit trimmed. So we'll fix that. But let's start with the porch base. And the porch base is right there. That's how far out it goes. So we can project a line down lightly. So first thing I'm going to do is extend my baseline out just a little bit. You'll do the same over here later. Okay, so with that, I now know that my porch height is no different than it was in the first elevation, and so it lines up with the finished floor. The finished floor runs across here and becomes the porch height outside. So there's my profile of the porch right there. Now we're going to go ahead and build the porch posts into place. Well, there they are. Now, we're not going to see the back one because the first one's in front of it. But we can extend this line up to some point. Now, we don't know exactly how high, but we know the width because remember, we're using the plan to find the width of the placement in latitude placing of the element. So basically, we just lined it up and shot a line down. Now, if we remember from the previous video that we mentioned the top of the eave right here is at 8 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. So before I do that, I need to put a little bit more of a point on this thing. Okay. So now that I've got that, we'll go ahead and mark that at 8 feet at the top of the eave, as the top of the eave. So there we go. And we know that the eave itself was 8 inches high from the previous elevation we did. And so I can kind of bring my post down a little bit now because it doesn't go that high. Okay, so we now know where the bottom part of the roof, porch roof is. How high is it to the other? Well, we could do some geometry and all that. We're not going to do that. We're just going to measure it from this drawing. So remember, finished floor, we're going to use the finished floor. So I measured that. It looks like it's about 10 foot 3. So that's what I'm going to measure. Double check, just make sure, 10 foot, 3 inches, we're good to go. So coming over here, 10 foot, 3 inches, goes to about right there. And that takes us at the right location. So that becomes our horizontal line of our ridge. So what we have is we have the roof of the porch in profile or in side elevation view. It looks something like this. I'll go ahead and provide that. All right, so got the base, got the posts, got the roof. Got the base by aligning it here, measuring it up to the finished floor line. That gave me the height. Took the posts directly out the plan, projected them up to a point where I could use the information off this element or as measured off here. Doesn't really matter, either works. So 8 foot was to here, came down 8 inches, and then I measured this height from the finished floor. We got that dimension, or that height, and that height by using other information. So that's our porch. Still not quite done. We have to provide the steps. So just like last time, we were able to use the information from the sheet here that said each stair tread is 7 high and each riser is 7 high and each tread is 11 deep. Well, we couldn't see the depth because of our view orientation previously. We'll see it now. So instead of, we're going to create a little bit of a grid, and you'll see how this works. It's perhaps the simplest way. We're just going to connect some dots. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 7 inches and put a point. And I'm going to do it again until I need 5 of these measurements. And I got one more. Okay. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to have 1 inch extra, but at this point, don't worry about it. Okay. So I'm just going to draw a light horizontal line out. Okay. Now, we really don't have to count the top piece because this edge is the first step down, and that's the edge of the porch. So we already measured the 7. Now we're going to do the 11. So we come to the bottom here, and we just mark each one 11 inches, which is just a hair short of a foot. We do each one. That's why we need a little bit sharper pencil at this point, because precision will show its head here. So we need how many steps down? Well, let's count them. We need 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm done. Now, if you remember, I lost my copy here. I could project this up and I could say, hey, look, that's where that is. So it works both ways. All right, so now I'm going to do a quick light line of all those tick marks and verticals. Okay. So that's what you can't see it because it's very, very light, but you'll see me now draw it in. So I have 7 inches, grid of 7 inches going this way and 11 inches going this way. So I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to go out 11. I'm just following the grid. Down 7, out 11, following the grid, down. A little sloppy there, but that's okay. So rough. Okay, and then down 7, out 11, down 7, out 11, and the last one hits the ground, and we're done. Now, hopefully you can see that profile. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 along this way, 11, 11, 11, 11 this way. All I did was just connect the dots along that grid, and that gave me that profile. Okay, so remember, 7 down, 11 horizontally, and that should get you there. All right, so that's the profile of the stair, simply placed. We could do a lot more detail, but we don't need to at this scale. So next what we want to do is put the railings in. We did the railings here and they were pretty easy to find because they were just some horizontal dimensions. They get a little bit more tricky here. Okay, so let's start with the top. We know from our previous dimensions that this height is 42 inches or 3 foot 6 inches. So measuring from the finished floor, 3 foot and 6 inches. That's the top of the railing right there. Okay, and I'm going to mark the other side of the post here because that's going to be the beginning part of the railing coming down. All right, so that right there is the top of the railing, and these railings are 2 inches thick. That's going to be challenging. So one of the things I'm going to tell you now is that there's a little bit of a shortcut. Code says that we're not supposed to be able to have a space bigger than 4 inches because little kids get their heads stuck in it and then everybody gets excited. So as a result, all the maximum opening cannot be bigger than 4 inches. You can't pass a 4-inch sphere through that railing. That's the ticket. So, but it's really hard to measure 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. So you can see my trick here as I do this. And then we're going to do something similar on the next railing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark them 6 inches apart, because it's pretty easy to mark. Just come over. That one's a little bad there. I'm going to fix that one, make it a little better. There, there, and there. Okay, now I'm just going to put a horizontal line just where each one of those was. And as I do that, what I'm doing is I'm giving the respective top of each rail. There we go. Now, it's kind of hard to see what's what, but you'll see it as I draw this in. Now, I'm just going to come down 2 inches from each one rather than going 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4. I just need to come down 2 below each of those horizontal lines. And you say, well, that's kind of hard. You'll be okay. Just take a shot at it and you'll be fine. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to pretty much eyeball it because I've been drawing for a while and I kind of know about where 2 inches is, and it's a rough out. I'm not necessarily doing my final. So if it's a little bit off, I'll fix it on the final. That one's a little hair fat, but this one's okay. Okay, and the last one. There we go. They look pretty good. So I could show you them in more detail, but I don't need to do that. All right, so I've got the top railings done. Now I got to do all the stair ones. So let's start with a quick note. Even though it's not showing it quite right on this, generally speaking, we want to go one extra tread out to make things work for railings. So I'm going to add in one more 11-inch out here. And I'm going to mark that. I'm going to bring a line up. Now, as I remember, I moved a mark over to here, and so if I measure from this point down to here, it should be 42 inches, and indeed it is. It's 3 foot 6. All right, so I need to do the same thing here, 3 foot 6 out. So I go, and so you'll see what happens. There's a way of checking this, but this is the best way to do it, is measure out the 11, draw a vertical line, and measure up the 42 inches. Now, I'm going to do one other trick, another test. This way, you'll know if things are correct. The measurement of each of these rail heights occurs at the nosing. That's that point where the vertical and the horizontal come together. That's called the nosing. So that nosing point, there, all have to be 42 inches. That railing must come off that point. No more deviation than it's got to be consistent, 42 inches. The reason is people who are not paying attention, they start to stumble, they need to grab the railing, and it can't even be, oh, I need to grab it low or high. It needs to be at the same height consistently throughout the design of the stair. So we've said 42 works for a guardrail and a handrail. That's what we're going to use at this point too. So 42 inches, I'm just going to measure off one of the intermediates just to test ourselves. There's 3 and 6 right there. Now, I just put a dot there. I'm not going to draw any verticals yet. Here's what I want you to understand. I'm using my adjustable here because I can, and it works. And what I wanted you to see is, if you look closely, you'll see that my adjustable triangle hits every nosing precisely at that point, and then out here at that one leg point that comes out. So let's go up to the top and test. Right there is my top, and right there's my top. They all line up. So what I'm getting at is that this height, by testing it off this point, it's also the same height there also. So anywhere you want to measure it, it works. Just keep the consistency of the slope. Set 42 here, set 42 here, shoot a line, they'll all work. Okay, now I used my adjustable to prove my point. You don't need to do that. Just set the point at 42 here, set the 42 point out here on the at the 11 inches out at that post, and you'll be good. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and add some thickness into this thing, which is that 2-inch thickness that we talked about previously for the guardrail. Okay, there it is. Are we done? No, remember the 4-inch ball? We can't pass that through there. How are we going to do that, Secor? Okay, so we're going to measure perpendicular to that slope. That means 90 degrees to it. So if you're not certain how to do that, lay one triangle this way and get it set. Then bring your other triangle in at a 90 and measure off. You want to be perpendicular to that. Those measurements get weird, very weird, if you try to measure them vertically. That's not correct. You have to be perpendicular to the slope. Okay, so there we are. That's good. Okay, now I'm going to just draw a single line from one of the points. Doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to do my 6-inch trick again. I'm going to start it. It has to line with the top. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. We can't do 6 because it interferes with the stair. Yeah, I guess we could. I'll try it. I don't think it's going to work, but we're going to try it anyway. Okay. It's kind of close. All right. So I'm going to shoot my lines. Here they go. There's 1. Here's 2. 3. And isn't this precise? Isn't it crazy how tight we have to be with this? And we do. Okay. Now, the last one comes right there. Theoretically, little Johnny could get his head caught right there. I don't know what we're going to do about that. We would figure something out in our design. But for all intents and purposes, we're okay. I'm going to go ahead and shoot in some lines here. And we'll see how close we come. But I want you to know that at this scale, it's not critical that you be perfectly to scale. If you show a line that instead of 2 inches is 1.5 inches, okay, just understand we're trying for as best we can with the pencil and so on. Computers do a little better job. Okay, so there's our stair railing. You can see we've got a top rail, and then we got the intermediate rungs horizontally placed. And they line up with what's going on here too. Okay, so last bit we have to do is our chimney. Our chimney, we know the height because the height is 2 feet above the ridge with a little 4-inch cap. So it's up here somewhere, so I'm just going to mark 2 feet above the ridge. We'll find out where in a minute. Plus a 4-inch cap. Now I just drew that in lightly because I know my target. Where is the fireplace and where does it line up? Okay, well, if you're thinking about the last assignment, it needs to line up over the fireplace. You don't want the smoke wandering around. It needs to go straight up and out. Okay, see the fireplace right there? There it is. So I don't need to do the full box. I just need to know that it's a 2x2 and that it lines up flush across the face. So we're 2 feet at this point right here, and we extend it up. So I lined it up at the face, and I'm at 2 feet, and I'm just going to project it up until it hits that cap and top of chimney up at the top. Okay, so that's good. We've anchored that. We've got that figured out. We'll go ahead and erase part of that roof there. Where does it intersect the roof here? It's right here. So there we are. Ooh, that lines up. That lines up. That means that point has to line up and that point line. So all I need is a horizontal line. I don't need it here because I'm looking this way. I don't see it. I do see it right there. So you can say, well, how high is that? Well, we can measure it from the finished floor. Looks like it's about 17 feet. I'm going to say 17.4. And that should be good enough. So I'm going to measure 17 and 4 inches right there. Come across. So I lined it up with the plan, just like before, shot it up, and I used the other drawing to get my heights. Got that height off the ridge and that height. Oops, that height off the ridge, and then I just got that height by just measuring it from the finished floor right there. Okay, so now I'm going to complete that. Add a little bit of meat on the end of the cap so it has a little bit more prominence. Okay, we're getting pretty darn close here. Again, you're going to put the other end of the porch on in a symmetric way. Just going to flip it this way. Everything's the same measurements, just opposite hand. Okay, so you can see what it looks like on this side. You can see what we have. Now, this is one of the things that we talked about at the very offset and in the preview, is that what you've been drawing here is just forms. There's no interest to it. There's no life to it. So as a designer, our goals are to make things kind of make sense. What are the opportunities for design? What kind of materials can we use here to enhance this thing? So as we start to think about it, there's a little bit of I'll call it kind of special considerations you need to have. And this is what designers do. They think about these things, and I want you to do the same thing. So I've got a couple thoughts here that I wanted to share. One of the things that we want to do is we need to pay attention. I'm looking at my notes. I apologize. Okay, we need to think as much about where things go as possible. We need to think what makes sense, what is logical. And my suggestion is look at the world around you. Again, there's things that are happening inside your house, how your cabinets are set, how your doors work, where your windows are. All those things are already around you. As you're driving down the street or riding your bike someplace or another, take a look at the buildings on your street, or maybe down the block or in the neighborhood somewhere, and look what's interesting. What materials do you think are successful? What design works well for that building? Nothing new under the sun. I think I said that previously. And so understand that designers are analyzing things all the time. They're looking at, I wouldn't do that. I would do that. That makes sense. And we're collecting those into a database in our head. And we're thinking about them all the time. And so as a designer and an interior designer, the rules are exactly the same. Whether you're doing an interior space or an outside facade, you have to be thinking about what is going to enhance the design of this object or this space or this building. So how do we really do that? Again, we're going to look at things, we're going to analyze them. What I'd like you to do is to start thinking about the specific characteristics of materials. Bricks aren't this big, they're this big. They were designed so a guy could pick one up, put masonry on it, or put mortar on it and set it in place. Now, are there concrete blocks? Yes, they are. But they're not this big. They're this big, and they're pretty heavy. The guy picks it up, and he mortars it. He butters the mortar on it, and he sets it in place. He does the next one. He does the next one. All of these are a certain size for a certain reason. So you can't make that stuff up. If you make it up, people look at it and go, that don't look right. That person doesn't know what they're doing. So start building your own database of what things are and how big they are. If you're not certain, get a tape measure and measure it. It's okay. It's all part of the learning process. So not only if looking around and seeing stuff, but you're paying attention to the stuff that needs to be registered in your mind as a menu of materials that you can use forever. So as you start to do that, it's important then to think about where they occur in the building. Do you put heavy stuff on the top or do you put it on the base? Well, generally speaking, things that are heavy in nature intuitively want to be lower because they anchor the object better to the base. Okay. Now, if you're a really good designer, super good designer, you can tweak those rules. It takes a long time to get to that point. So before you start experimenting, know the patterns, know what things work best and for what locations. Okay? So then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to start talking about what works. All right, so we've seen this elevation before. And actually, look, it's very similar to the one I drew today. But I'm giving you this so that you can see, I simplified some of the line work here a little bit. But it's pretty boring. If you take some tissue trace paper, you can start to see what things look like. You can start to see, oh, okay, this is clapboard siding. This is horizontal wood siding on. And here's what the shingles look like. And here's what the bricks look like when we do a brick fireplace. And here's what the same bricks look like when they're down low. You need to start building your elevations with the characteristics you want to see. Understand something. In my class, you don't get a lot of options for providing design. I'm sorry. You'll see a few in the future, but understand this. This is part of the learning process. It's thinking about how you apply materials to different designs. And so in this, I wanted you to see that I was able to experiment by laying some tissue paper down on top and lightly drawing it out and testing it. I like it or I don't. Do another one. Oh, I want to do freestanding stone. I want to do organic stone, river rock. Okay. How big is a river rock? It's not this big. It's about this big. The reason is the guy who has to put it on there, he can only carry so much. So he needs a block or a rock that's only so big. Think about those things. It's an organic way that people have been building for a long time. And so the materials relate to that. And I hope that you start to see that and understand that a little bit more. But I wanted you to also see that I was able to apply a little bit of texture to add some emphasis to this. I did put some marks on the glass so it shows as off as a little bit more glass. But I want you to experiment. So this assignment includes applying finishes to the facade, so you can describe it a little bit more in a little bit more character. So I'm not going to draw these up, and I'm going to let you do that. But you see, you've got all the parts and pieces you need to complete the assignment. I really think this is one of those fun ones that people have a good time with because they could start to experiment with their own design feelings about how things should look and how things should be. So as we close this assignment demonstration, I want you to keep in mind that there's some experimentation on your part that you need to do as you complete these assignments. I want you to complete them with good quality line control, line quality, and line weights. Remember, the profile of this building should punch off the sheet. And the interior lines, maybe not so much. So, and the heavier the material, maybe the heavier the line weight. So think about those things as you're working on it and do your best on this final on these final drawings because they are your work. You should be proud of them. And as I close this video, I want to say good luck with your assignment. I look forward to seeing your work as you turn it in and post it in Canvas. And I'll look forward to seeing you at our next class meeting. So until then, I'll say so long, take care, and thank you.